Welcome to Creating Disney Magic with Lee Cockerell. Lessons in leadership, management, and customer service. You can create magic too. I'm your host, Jody Mayberry, and of course, Lee wrote the fabulous book, Creating Magic, what I think is one of the top five business books out there. I may be a little biased, but Lee, I have a surprise for you this episode. I met someone years ago who told me that she read your book in college. That was kind of neat. And then
Yeah.
she recently was on the hit television show Survivor. And she said that she read your book again before going on Survivor. Before we introduce her, Lee, are you familiar with the show Survivor?
I certainly am. Absolutely.
Did
Yeah.
you have any clue before now that your book and your teachings played a role in a season of Survivor?
No, I didn't. I thought when you first told me maybe she used it to start a bonfire or something. I'm not sure, but yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad she read it, and I'm glad. Hopefully, it she got some pieces out of it that helped her survive.
All right, well, let's introduce our special guest. It's Liz Wilcox. Liz, it's so good to have you on Creating Disney Magic.
Hey friends, I am so blessed, so honored to be here. And it's really funny that Lee said maybe I used his book to create a bonfire because Lee, you probably don't know this, but that was my demise on the show is I could not make fire and I was eliminated. So I wish
Oh,
I would have had your book. Maybe it would have been drier than what they gave me and it would have caught fire a little faster.
well, it's fun. You must have learned a lot being on the show.
I definitely learned a lot. And, I think one of the strengths going into Survivor and going into the show and why I read your book in college, I have a master's degree in educational leadership, and it was actually required reading. So I knew when I was going on the show, we had about, I don't know, 5 or 6 days before the show started filming. And so you're just supposed to sit around, you can't talk to anybody. And I knew that was coming. And so I knew I was like, I know what book I'm going to read. I need a refresher on how to be a good leader while not being a manager, right? Because there's a lot of people go on Survivor and try to be managers, right? But you can't manage people that are going for $1 million, right? But you can certainly, guide, facilitate, and lead them. And so I read your book as much as I tried to hide the cover of what I was reading, right? I didn't want people to know I was reading it. But I definitely read your book and I took away a few really key, important lessons that helped me throughout the game.
Great. Well, thank you. I'm impressed and I'm happy to hear that. Yeah.
Well, as
So
soon as I heard that story, I knew, okay, we've got to have Liz on the show because I'm I'm fascinated in two ways. One, to see what did Liz learn from the book that she applied to the show? And I'm going to ask that. And then two, having read the book in college, read the book right before Survivor, I'm fascinated to see what questions Liz might have for Lee. But Liz, let's start with the other side. The first thing I mentioned, what did you learn in the book Creating Magic that turned out to be helpful in Survivor?
Yeah, so there were a few key points, like I mentioned, but I think it's one of the first chapters. Everyone is important, right? And I think, using it in college and using it in my career and Survivor really behooved me, right? To learn that lesson very early on in life, and that it is magical to feel important, to feel like, the leaders care. And so I really wanted to take that into Survivor because a big mistake a lot of people make is to dismiss others, right? Oh, well, they're not important. They're not in my alliance. So they're not important. They're not part of my plan. So I don't have to make them part of the plan, right? And I find even rewatching episodes of my own season, I'm like, oh, that's where they forgot that I was important, or that's where they forgot so and so was still in the game, right? And so that was a huge takeaway for me, a huge reminder reading that. And I love that, you, Lee, put that at the very forefront, right? Because people matter. That is the magic of Disney, the magic of any, space. If you can make sure everyone knows that they're valued, that they, have a contribution to make and you care about that contribution. Uh, oh my gosh, it'll take you really far. And I find that it took me incredibly far in the game. When I look back at my relationships with people, when I talk to them outside of the game, they tell me, you know what, Liz, of all the people out there, you made me feel like you were really listening. You made me feel like I was important, like I was part of your plans. Even if I thought maybe you were lying, I felt that way. And so I thought you weren't lying, right? Even if somebody had told me something different, when you looked me in the eye, and I would say things very intentionally, you are important. You are part of this plan. You know, Jody, I care about you. And, and then of course I'd vote you out that night, right? But that's the game of Survivor, right? We wouldn't do that in our real lives, right? But that's such an important takeaway for anyone, whether you're playing a game or in real life, to understand about people. And I love that you have that, Lee.
Well, thank you, and we all know that we all want to be somebody. We all want to feel like we're somebody. We all want to matter. I don't care. I've never met a person who didn't want to matter and didn't. And pretty much that's the problem in the world right now. We're not doing
Amen.
we're not doing a good job anywhere. And and especially I worry about young people that don't get that support early on in their life where they grow up with more security and self-confidence and knowing they can do it because that's half the battle. Every problem you have in life will be a person creates it for you. And so it's
Yeah, that's
it's
so true.
we need to be tender. We got to be, humans are very we get hurt easily mentally. So I said, all the problems are above your forehead. So that's where we got to be better.
Yeah, I love that phrase. And that's funny you mentioned that because on Survivor, they cast people that sort of have this, I don't know, sordid past, or, they were down here and somehow they've been able to rise above their circumstances. And when you go out on the island, suddenly all your defense mechanisms, all of that, all the negative experiences you've had in your life, whether you weren't supported or something bad happened to you, it surfaces. And I thought I was healed, right? Like, I'm good, I'm healed, I'm a modern woman. But, within minutes of being, the camera's rolling, suddenly, you feel out of control. You feel like, oh, I've got to go back to those child defenses. And so, again, just having read, like, everyone is important, everyone needs to feel supported, everyone needs to feel like a valuable resource. That helped me kind of put my defenses down and make myself akin to others, of saying, hey, tell me about how you're feeling right now. Oh my gosh, you're here playing for your mom. You want to buy your mom a house. And suddenly, that's important to them. So it's important to me, right? And I don't know what's going on with my camera. If you guys are watching, the tracking keeps turning off. I'm so
Yeah, that
sorry.
was good right there. We got
I talk too much with my hands.
well, you're right. I think this whole issue of helping people know they matter is something we can all do. I always tell people half the stuff in your brain's not true, so you need knowledge to change it. You need to read, you need to have the experience like you did. I mean, we know that education, experience, and exposure. I'm sure that experience and exposure has changed you in many ways about how you think about things when you wake up every day. And that's what exposure does. And so many people don't get it. They stay in their village. They don't go out and take the chance. And so I'm glad you did that because I know in my own life, getting out of the village, getting more experience and getting more exposure makes you a different person. I grew up in a little town where everybody would, in the 40s and 50s, where I went to a segregated school, and we had a school for blacks, a school for whites, and a third school for Native Americans. That's how segregated we were. And I would have thought that was fine if I hadn't got out of there. So exposure is really a big deal.
Yeah, I love that. And that's one of the things I love about Survivor. Now they have a diversity initiative, right? So you're exposed to all sorts of people you would never encounter in your real life. I'm a business owner from Florida. I met, a real estate agent from Mississippi, someone from Canada in their 20s. I'm not hanging out with people in their 20s anymore. And I'll tell you, Lee, just the exposure alone changed my language. Before we hit record, Jody, Lee, and I were talking about that meme of 6'7" with all the kids, right? It changed the way I talked. By the time I left, I was, saying all these modern phrases that I didn't even know about, but I was, you know, well, if they think it's important to talk like that, I'll talk like that, right?
That's what happens when you get out of the village.
Yeah, I loved it though. It was so, and now I have friends and peers, from all walks of life, all areas of the world, and it's amazing. It's really broadened my horizons for sure.
Good. Those are good lessons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has been really fascinating to me to hear on how Liz directly took something from your book, Lee, and made it work in Survivor. And it takes me to how you've talked about before, how leadership is not a title. It's not, it's more of a role, it's a responsibility. It's more about influence than it is power. And Liz showed that being on Survivor, she had no authority over anybody there and was
Yeah.
still able to be a leader by practicing this idea that everybody matters.
Yeah. That's the name of the game. And
Yeah.
knowledge is the key that opens all the doors ahead of you. And glad you got that in many ways.
Yeah, amen. And I mean, knowledge, they say in Survivor, knowledge is power, right? And not, or knowledge is currency, they say, right? That's what everyone exchanges. And it gets you the things you want. And what I think there's a chapter in your book, be careful what you say and do, or something like that. And that, again, just a great, I mean, we all know that, right? Our mothers told us that, but it was just such a great reminder before the camera started rolling. And something that Lee says in the chapter is, something like, what are people saying about you when you're not around? There are no untold stories. And that's very, very true when you're playing for $1 million and everyone's out to get each other. And so for me, it was so incredibly important to craft very intentionally the reputation that I had out there. I did things very intentionally for better or worse, right? It, worked out the way it worked out. But I loved that there was a whole chapter on that because I would think in my head, Liz, don't tarnish your reputation. This is what people are saying, or what you think people are saying about you. Make sure you when you wake up tomorrow morning, you continue on that path, because it's when people start switching their behaviors, is, oh, well, what's up with Jody? Yesterday he was like this, now he's like that. He's unpredictable. We've got to get him out. So I tried very hard to make sure, whatever I said, whatever I did was in alignment with those untold stories. Like when I walk away, what are they going to say? And I pride myself in doing that very intentionally within the game. And it worked out really well. There were a lot of people after the game that told me, Liz, I never once suspected you. I didn't even know you were playing the game. You made me feel so, so much so that they dismissed me, which is great. Again, intentionally, I wanted people to think, oh, Liz just loves people, and her daughter dared her to go on this show, and now she's here and she's just having fun. Spoiler alert, I was not having fun. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. Sleeping outside and lying to people's faces, that's not fun. But the point was, be careful what you say and do. And I think there's another chapter about learning the truth that, again, Lee just mentioned, knowledge is everything, right? Always be in learning mode. That's something I learned in college from Lee's book. Always be in learning mode. Always be in learning mode. Don't, I always like to say, I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I always want to learn something from someone else, whoever I'm talking to. And that was, again, in the forefront of my mind every night when I went to bed, every morning when I woke up. What can I learn today about these other people, about what's going on in the game to advance me?
Well, I like the word intentional that you use frequently because really, I asked last week, I put a note out to everybody I deal with, and I said, what are you going to do on purpose this week? What are you going to, I mean, absolutely. On Wednesday, you're going to do this, and Thursday, you're going to do that. Friday, you're going to do this on purpose, not just happen by accident. And I think every morning when you think about that, what should I, intentionality is really help. It's a good way to make you do things you don't want to do. I'm going to do this, and I know it's going to be hard, and I don't like it, but I'm going to do it. I think for me, thinking about especially the hard things of committing to them like a day or two before. On Sunday, I say, okay, Thursday, I'm going to sit down and talk to this employee and I'm going to tell them what they need and then do it. Have a plan of, and I think sometimes the hard things are, of course, it's good to get your brain ready to push through those and not walk away and give up right before the meetings. A lot of people are brave and then they get in the meeting and they don't do what they thought they were going to do. And it's irresponsible to be a leader,
Right?
do those things. So good lessons you learned there.
Yeah, thank you. I really try, in and out of the game, right? To be very intentional and to be even, I think when you set an intentional goal, right? Like your goal was to, create that magic for Walt Disney World Resort, right? And so, of course, you can do the hard thing when you have that vision, when you're working for a higher purpose, right? You can be brave, not waver in what you need to do. And that was something, of course, in Survivor, I had the goal, I'm going to win $1 million. I'm going to be the
Yeah,
sole survivor. And so I could do those brave things. I could have those hard conversations with people. I could own up to mistakes. I think that's the mark of a true leader, too. When you make a mistake, become accountable for it. There were times on the island because, again, my intention was good. But oh crap, I said that. Whoops, my bad. Again, I don't want to tarnish my reputation. I need to go be accountable for this immediately so that people, that's the story they're going to tell. Oh, yeah, Liz flubbed up, but she immediately was like, oh, wait, that's not what I meant. Da 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 da. So again, that intentionality, I think, comes from having that higher purpose, that bigger goal, even outside of yourself, to keep going, to do those brave things and to, get out of bed, commit and actually, stay devoted to that goal.
absolutely. And I think that what you just said is reflection. Think about every day what I shouldn't have done or what I could have done better and then fix it. Because most people don't reflect, which is just a matter of sitting on intentionally thinking about what happened yesterday that I could have done better. Why did I say that? Do I need to apologize today? I see Justin Timberlake behind you. He lived in our neighbor. He lived in our neighborhood when they first came out here in Orlando. Uh, we never met him or saw him, but there are girls trying to break into the neighborhood all the time to try to meet him.
Well, they had that higher purpose, right? They were very intentional with their goal setting.
They were intentional.
We can learn a lot from teenage girls. I'll tell you that. They're very devoted, very devoted family.
Persistence. Yeah,
Mm, great
yeah,
word. Great word. That's so funny. That's so
yeah.
funny.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's great. Good lessons.
Hmm.
We have more I would like to talk to Liz about. So I think we need to bring Liz back for one more episode. Before we wind down, Liz, you read the book in college, you read it right before Survivor. You got to practice what you learned from the book at Survivor. But now that you have the chance after reading it twice, implementing what you learned on Survivor, is there any question you want to ask Lee?
That's funny.
Well, I would love to know maybe, and it's hard to distill down into one thing, but off the top of your head or whatever you're feeling called to share, how has writing this book, creating magic specifically, and having it have such a large impact and, going places that you didn't even think it would go, right? It's helping me compete for $1 million with Jeff Probst out in Fiji, right? That's probably not your intentional purpose for writing that book, right? But how does that, if you could sum it up into a feeling, what does that feel like to have such a large impact on the world?
Well, I'm amazed that it's done that. It's in 22 languages. It's used in universities all around the world, and it's selling as well as it ever did. And I think about that sometimes. I go, what? I said, I was not even a good student in school. English was not my thing. I said, I'm still trying to figure out where the commas go when I write something, and my only goal in life is to use a semicolon and know why. And
I love
so
that.
it's not like, but I got a lot of encouragement from a lady who was best friends with my wife when they were growing up, and she said she had an agency in New York. And she said you ought to write a book. She read some of my stuff because I wrote a newsletter at Disney every week for the employees, for the cast members. So I had a way of writing. Apparently, people tell me that it sounds like the same way I speak. It's just like, okay, no big words. Most words have no more than 4.5 letters in them. And yeah, so I love it. I love I met with a fellow, a doctor from Mexico this morning. Same thing. He has read it. He wanted to meet me. He wants to do more work in Mexico. And I'm just going like, wow. And I think that book is common sense that you already knew, that we need to be reminded. Our mothers probably told us that stuff, and then we got lost somewhere and forgot that everybody matters and treat people respectfully and keep learning. I mean, you read these things in everywhere. So I think, and maybe the history of my success was I didn't graduate from college. I went in the army. I got a job as a waiter and just kind of learned the business on the way up at Hilton, Marriott, and Disney. And next thing, I think the lesson there is don't underestimate what you can achieve, number one. And don't underestimate that if you keep plugging along and become an expert in something, that's what people want. They don't really, all people, I thought, loved Barack Obama when they said, what kind of guy you like to work with or what kind of people? And he said, I like to work with people, just get it done. They take care of things. And nobody ever asked me about a degree all along the way. They kept promoting me because I had become an expert in the food and beverage and hotel business by doing the jobs of washing dishes and being a cook and being a waiter. So I knew it deeply, and I think that's what people get out of the book. That this is not theory; it's reality, and we all when I hear from people say, "Yeah, I thought he was talking to me," because I feel the same way. And the problem is we underestimate our what we can achieve, and you shouldn't ever, because who knows who's next. And people are really looking for somebody to help them think about how to move forward and to overcome their insecurities. And so that's the fun part is when I get a note from somebody saying this really helped me rethink. And I had a lady this morning. She's in the banking business in national system, and she said. I've been working with her a long time. She said, I have decided I'm going to go be a leader because I know I am. I didn't realize that until I went through all of this. She thought just thought I was a manager here in the office. And no, I know I'm a leader. I know because I do all the things you talk about. And those coming to that conclusion is really important to overcome any doubts you have about what you should be doing because too many people don't, and when they could have been so much more just by waking up every morning. I said, all you need is a good attitude and be reliable, and you can do about anything. you
I
know,
love that so much. Good attitude, be reliable.
that's it.
Amen. I mean, amen. I'm thinking of all the people I respect in my life, and that pretty much sums them up. I love that, Lee. Thank you so much.
And you remember all the people who are not reliable.
Oh, I got a headache now. We're gonna have to take a break.
Especially teenagers when they're 10, 11, 12, 13.
Eh,
But they
amen.
recover.
Yes.
They recover. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good. Glad to have you on. Thank you. And Jody will
Thank
figure out
you.
how to do this next session.
Yes, we're going to bring Liz back. Before we go, we have to mention our friends at Magical Vacation Planner, but there's also a connection there. I was speaking on a cruise to Alaska this past summer, and Liz said she wanted to go. And I said, Liz, call our friends at Magical Vacation Planner. And she did. How did it go, Liz, working with Magical Vacation Planner?
Honestly, it was super seamless. I've never booked a cruise. I've never even thought about going on a cruise, but I could listen to Jody Mayberry talk all day. And he said he was speaking on a cruise. So I said, all right, say less. Let's get it booked. He said, oh, check out this. And so the person I worked with was so amazing, just super simple. I said, talk to me like I'm a third grader because I've never been on a cruise. I've never known anybody that goes on cruises. And she just said it, from A to Z. She got it done. Even a few days before I was set to fly to Seattle to get on our Alaskan cruise, she said, hey, do you have a hotel booked? I said, no. And she said, well, let me get that done for you. And I said, great. I always say anything worth doing is worth outsourcing. So it was great. I loved it so much. She was so seamless. She got us a hotel super close to is it called the shipyard, the dock, the port? Port is the word I'm looking for,
Port,
y'all.
that's
See,
right.
see, I know nothing, y'all. I know nothing. And she got it done. We, got in the air or got in the hotel, got straight to the port, had a great time with Jody and his daughter. And I just love the whole experience. And I'll definitely be booking with her again soon.
Bravo. Thank you.
So that's so great to hear. You can find Magical Vacation Planner at leecockerell.com. There's a banner there, or call them directly at 407 442 2694. Let them know you heard Liz Wilcox talk about what a great experience she had. And I don't know if they'll treat you any better, but they'll still like to hear it. And next episode, Liz is coming back. So normally I would say, Liz, where do we find you? Where can we find more? But Liz is back with us next episode, and we're going to go much deeper into that. So join us again for Liz next week. Until then, go out and create magic for others.